My next guest is on set with me right now. Obviously, he's been one of the most outspoken senators on this issue. He's a point person on the current effort to pass legislation in the Senate. It's Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Congratulations on the new show.
Thank you very much. It's exciting to be on the anniversary of D-Day. I would say that it's probably the most American
That's right.
And one of our best moments as a country. So at least I won't forget. Let me start with Allie's report there. You're close. Let's talk about timing first. If we don't see a bill at the end of this week, we won't see a bill.
No, listen, I think we've been making progress every single day. Our goal is to get an agreement by the end of the week, but I think we'll take the time necessary. Remember, we're trying to get broad consensus, Republicans and Democrats. We are talking about doing something substantial. I hear the skepticism about how big this package can be, but I'm not going to support anything that doesn't save lives. I'm not going to support something that just checks a box. And so in order to get a bill that makes a meaningful difference, it's going to take a little bit of time. Our hope, our goal is by the end of the week, but we'll take the time that we need.
There seem to be 4 categories that's been reported on. I want to see if you'll confirm them. Getting rid of some of the loopholes in the background check system. Obviously not all of them, it sounds like. The red flag law, not a federal one. Is this about incentivizing states to pass their own or a federal one?
I actually don't think it'd be a good idea to have a federal red flag law. I think it'd be very inaccessible for local law enforcement to have to go into the federal court system. So I support state laws. I think they need some guidance and some funding in order to implement these laws and make sure that everybody knows how to access
carrot
them.
And stick. So for instance, everybody had to raise the drinking age to 21 in order to get your highway funds back in the 80s. Would it be something like that with the red flag laws?
I think we're talking about carrots.
Okay, all carrots in this case. School security, what does that mean?
No definition on that yet. There's no doubt there's going to be an increased appetite from school districts to both harden their physical security, invest in security personnel. I think there's bipartisan agreement that we should try to help schools with that. That's part of the discussions.
And then this investment in mental health, what is realistic? What's on the table of this mental health spending?
Well, I think you know how I sort of feel about the intersection of the conversation between mental health and gun violence. I sort of submit that we don't have any more mental illness in this country than any other high-income nation. We have all of the gun violence. And so I don't necessarily make the connection between mental illness and violence in the way that some of my colleagues do. But we have a broken mental health system in this country, and so we should try to fix it. We are right now fleshing out some of the investments we could make. I think obviously it will be and should be targeted on the juvenile population, on the profile of these mass shooters, which tend to always be in this 18 to 25 range. I think we can come to agreement on that as well.
So is there any other area that's being explored, or are those the 4 areas?
I think there are other areas that are being explored. So I think there's, maybe 4 or 5 ideas, relatively important but incremental changes to our gun laws.
How about raising the age from 18 to 21 on these assault rifles?
Obviously, I support that. The president supports it. It's just a question of whether that can get 60 votes in the Senate.
Rick Scott signed a bill as governor for it.
He did.
Even Texas, at least with their handguns, at one point had it at 21 on handguns. I mean, you would think there's some wiggle room.
I think there's certainly Republican support for raising the age. I don't know whether there are 60 votes yet. And right now, my entire focus is on what can get 60 votes.
And I guess from the big picture, New York Times did a pretty exhaustive, and you probably saw, of sort of looking at what laws were violated with each of these mass shootings. What's really striking is in the last 5 years, no laws were violated.
Right.
These were legally purchased weapons. Now, the things that we see here are, number one, things that could impact these last 5 years of mass shootings. Raising the age, that doesn't appear to be on the table, or a waiting period.
Well, properly administered red flag laws in these states clearly could have made a difference. It could have made a difference in Texas. And
how?
How? If you
with the Texas law, there was no reports of this young man at the time, unless you're saying 5 years worth of mental health checks in a school system might have made this incident not happen. But that's a reach, is it not?
Well, I think you do have to look at the totality of the circumstances. More evidence is coming out every single day about what he was saying online in the lead up to the shooting. But again, the focus has to be on the everyday gun violence that happens in this country. I know the country is focused on these mass shootings, rightfully so, but every single day 100 people are dying from guns. And so if you are able to tighten up our background check system, you're going to save lives here in Washington, D.C., in Bridgeport, Connecticut, in New Orleans, Louisiana. We've got to be focused on the totality of gun violence in this nation, not just the mass shootings.
If you can't do this, look, John Cornyn has basically praised what you're describing here as a very pragmatic solution, that you should be able to get the votes for this. Should.
Yeah.
I have yet to count 10 Republicans.
Yeah.
Have you?
So sometimes when we go away for a week, right, we go home for a week, sensitive negotiations like this fall apart. This week, the opposite is happening because my colleagues went home and heard the same thing I did. Parents are frightened to death. They are frightened to death for their kids, and they're frightened to death that government isn't going to be able to respond to the most fundamental concern that parents have, the safety of their kids. I think senators are coming back to town today with a newfound resolve to get something done. I get it. There's a reason why we haven't passed substantial gun reform in 30 years. This is the most politically complicated, most emotionally fraught issue we deal with. I think something different is happening right now.
All right, but look what happened to the Buffalo congressman, Congressman Jacobs there, who suddenly all of his support went away when he just expressed the openness for an assault weapons ban. Did that not send a message to some Republican elected officials?
Right, but look what happened in 2018, where anti-gun violence candidates won all over the country campaigning on universal background checks. So I don't doubt that there are different politics on this issue in the Republican and Democratic side of the aisle, but you can win in this country.
New York State and the suburbs of Buffalo, though.
Like
that just happened.
You can win in this country on running on things like expanding background checks and red flag laws.
Not everywhere. And isn't that part of the issue? Is you got to that politically, until someone loses for having, for basically being too pro-gun, the politics of this doesn't change dramatically?
If we pass something along the lines of what we are contemplating, every single person who votes for it will be running on it. We will pass something that is broadly popular, more popular now than ever before. In the wake of Uvalde, in the wake of the shootings last weekend, there is a popular uprising in this country to do something. And what we pass, it will be mainstream, it will be bipartisan, and it will be popular.
You are an eternal optimist on this. If it doesn't happen, then what?
I'm devastated, and I fear for the future of this country. I mean, I think this is a test of democracy. I think there are a lot of people out there who have been doubting whether democracy can deliver for them for a decade. And now, at this moment, if we're unable to put our politics aside and do something to guarantee the safety of our kids, I think it's another blow to the health of American democracy. I think it's a big moment for us.
You spend a lot of time focused on foreign affairs as well, and I think you have a particular interest in Latin America. I'm just curious, we had some breaking news over the last couple hours. The Mexican president's going to personally boycott the U.S.-hosted Summit of Americas over us not inviting Nicaragua, the leaders of Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela. First of all, the decision by President Biden, was it the right one?
I think the president made the right decision. But I think that our policy to continue to isolate the Cuban regime and the Venezuelan regime continues to be a thorn in our side. And it is time for us to explore ways to try to midwife talks in Venezuela, to try to continue to reform our relationship with Cuba as a mechanism of opening up new areas and new avenues of cooperation with our partners in the region. This is just another sign that our Venezuela policy and our Cuba policy is badly broken.
But this is now, I mean, this is kind of an embarrassing moment that our neighbor won't come to the Summit of the Americas.
Well, but this has a lot to do with his domestic politics. I don't know that this is necessarily a death blow to the
No, I'm not saying it's a death blow, but
relationship between the United States and Mexico.
When you look at what China's trying to do in Latin America and what we're trying to do in Latin America, not the best moment.
Yeah, and listen, we've got to have different answers for our partners in Latin America. We've got to have more economic partnerships like those that are being offered by the Chinese. This is should be a lesson for us that we need to do more in the hemisphere.
Chris Murphy, it's good to see you.
Thank you
for coming on.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.